Aloha, everybody. This is Dr. Jones, and you are in Meteorology 101, Intro to Meteorology, what I like to call real-time weather, for at least 12 of the 15 weeks anyway. So I'm going to introduce you to all of the different moving parts for this class. You'll find there's a fairly steep learning curve, but you're going to be just fine. That's why I'm going to start you off with a different chapter than we would normally start off with, but I'll explain that in just a minute. So, like all courses that you are pretty familiar with here at West Oahu, you probably will be have used Laulima in the past. And if you haven't, if you're new to this platform, it's pretty straightforward. This is where all of your courses usually are located. And you will find that, of course, I have tons of stuff, but that's because I'm an instructor. But you're going to be wanting to make sure you click on the Met 101, and then if we have announcements, they'll be listed over here in this area. I notice there aren't any right now, and all announcements will be posted to you and will made so that you will be actually available, see them in your email or whatnot. Probably the most important link that you're going to have through this course will be the assignments, tests, and surveys. And so we also will have discussions. Resources has some really great stuff in it. We'll talk about that in just a minute. This is the course intro video that you'll be able to link to. The bookstore, this is a link to the bookstore, and this is important because this is where you will actually set up your account to access the RealTime Portal, and perhaps if you use the web version of the book through the bookstore, you'll do this. There's a chat room, which we use when I have virtual office hours, grade book, of course, email, calendar, syllabus, statistics, whatnot. So let's take a look at these parts and how they relate to all of the different stuff in this class. The assignments, tests, and surveys link. You will notice that we have our first assignments. Actually, there are 4 of them, and there are 4 assignments each week. Now, it sounds like a lot, but it's not too bad once you get started with the course. You'll see that we start with Chapter 13. There are 15 chapters in the 7th edition of the Weather Studies textbook that you will be using, and 3 of those chapters, 13, 14, and 15, are what we call static. They are not dynamic like chapters 1 through 12. Chapter 13, 14, and 15 are designed to be used at any time during the 15 weeks of the course, because not all of the campuses not just the University of Hawaii system, but nationwide, in fact internationally, they're using these materials start with the same start date. And with the current situation, we're not even sure what date we're really going to start, probably. But I'm hopeful that we'll be starting at least in the fully online classes on the 23rd of August. So just a couple weeks from now. So you'll have each week you have a current weather studies, which you can see is this one's chapter 13. You'll have an investigation A, an investigation B, and chapter progress. So where do you find these? These are questions with multiple choice responses. So if you want to find the actual source of the answers for the current weather studies, you're going to have to use your AMS bookstore link, which you will be purchasing either directly from American Meteorological or through the UH West Oahu bookstore, and you'll get a card that'll give you a code, and then you'll be able to access the weather manual, which is considered the investigations manual, the weather studies textbook, and probably the most important part is the real-time weather portal. So your current weather studies, the actual materials that will give you the answers to the questions, will be found on the portal itself. You'll notice here on the portal, CWS, Current Weather Studies, Chapter 13 and 15 are already available for you. And the chapter progress, we'll talk about that in just a minute. There's some other things that you can take a look at There's an archive. The archive actually will be for your semester, but there's also archives for the last academic year. So if there's something that you're really interested in and you want to look back and see what was done last year about hurricanes necessarily, there's a way to look. But this format, what you'll actually have is when we have our current weather studies, which will begin on the essentially the 31st, you'll be able to click over here and you'll be able to get a PDF. It'll actually follow a very standard format that looks like this. It'll say chapter whatever week we're on, and there'll be a PDF to open. There'll be an answer form which you can actually use, and that answer form is actually the same form that is used to create the Laulima multiple choice. You'll also notice a investigations A form, that would be here, and a B form. And so these are just the answers. But let's go ahead and take a look at your current weather studies. So this is a pretty standard format. There's almost always graphs or images to interpret. And here's your question and the choices, and they align with the chapter 13 over here, current weather studies. I believe this chapter had 13 questions in the current weather studies. Yep, there were 13 this week. So you can do chapter 13, 14, and 15 pretty much at any time throughout the semester. I have selected for you to do chapter 13 first, and then we'll go into chapter 1 in it'll be open on the 23rd in a preview mode, but ideally the 31st will be when the that course, that chapter is available to everybody. And so you can look at 14, you can do it anytime, and 15. So let's take a look back now at chapter progress. And chapter progress, we'll take a look at chapter progress right here. This is a PDF of the chapter progress. This is how the chapter progress here will look as well. But the question then you might ask is, well, where would I get these questions? So the answer is you will go and you will access the textbook. And so the textbook can be accessed as a web document, accessible from anywhere. And you can get into it. You can go to the table of contents. And you can pick your chapter. We're going to go to chapter 13. It's a little slow. And there we go. Gives you the objectives. You can click on through. And it's got images to look at. And this is where you'll find the answers to the questions that are asked right here. Okay. That's pretty straightforward. And there's 15 questions from each of the 15 chapters through this book. And if you recall from the portal, we'll go back here and back one more time. You'll recall from the portal that there was also answer forms for the investigations. These answer forms are also in this area. But the question then becomes, where do we find the investigation materials that'll help us answer that? Again, you'll go back to your bookstore. You'll go to the weather manual and click on it. Go to the menu, table of contents, scroll down to, you'll notice 13A and 13B. And again, just like the textbook, there's information here. And you'll notice this is kind of nice how it's written. There's a whole bunch of information, but then you'll have questions that actually referring to this map right here. So one, in figure 13A, which is this figure, most Northern California was under what kind of warning? Well, that's this red. So it's out. It's a red flag warning. Well, you have two choices. So I gave everybody an answer already. All right. The table of contents also is where you would go to 13B. And 13B is the second part of the investigation manual. So this is all pretty good stuff. And it's been updated. It was updated to, this is 2017. The primary stuff that you'll be looking at in the actual real-time weather and majority of the investigation manual will be 2019 and 2018. So this one's a little bit old, but that's okay. Let's see. Oh, one more thing. You may opt to get this as a digital edition as opposed to using the web browser version. And when you get the digital edition, they're through Adobe Digital Editions. It's an app that you'll need to put either on your iPad or your tablet. You can go on a computer, laptop, phone. You can load it onto 3 different devices. So you have an opportunity to have it on a computer, tablet, phone, whatever you're comfortable with using. I'm not a fan of using the e-reader, Blue Fire reader on my iPad, or not on my iPad, on my phone, because it's just very small for me. But you can have access to the books, but you're limited to your location. But if you have high-speed internet, you can definitely use the internet without problem, or you can download it to a device. And I have it downloaded to my computer. All right, so those are the main moving parts of this course. You'll have 4 per week. There will also be discussions on a weekly basis. I have yet to post those discussions, but typically you have 3 or 4 questions. You will only need to respond to one of the questions. It will be relevant to the readings for that week, and it will to get 5 points a week, you need to post your response to one of the questions. To get the full 10 points, you need to also respond to one of your class peers. So it's a fairly easy way to get 10 points a week in the class. So that's 150 points for the semester. That is, the discussion posts are equal to, greater value than the midterm or the final. So the midterm and the final are each worth about 110 to 115 points, and your discussions over the semester will be worth about 150. So pretty easy way to pad your scores in the class. Some people may get concerned about the number of questions that you have to do on a weekly basis, and I would agree that there's a lot of work in this course, but please be aware that there will be a couple of extra credit opportunities, as well as I curve the grade. So the person with the highest score in the class will be the new 100%, and I curve from that point. And so that's not encouraging you to do poorly. It is encouraging you to do well. Last semester, I had only a handful of C's. I primarily had B's and A's. There are occasionally people who have to drop the course simply because they've got too many things on their plate. But at this point, everybody seems to be doing pretty well. So let's see. Oh, resources. Good thing to look at. So let's take a look at the resources. In the resources, you'll find that these are the materials for the current weather studies questions, which are essentially the same thing that we found here in the portal. That's right here. So I just made duplicates of those. I will probably not be posting any of the others simply because those are something that you'll have to have. Chapter figures, all of the figures from all of the chapters are in this folder, except chapters 14 and 15, which I'll have to do. But if there's an image that you really needed to take a look at, they're going to all be there for you. So it's pretty straightforward. We also have and I'll load the chapter progress questions as the semester progresses. You'll also notice that there are chapter lecture PowerPoints. Now, this is some supplemental. I have never been a lecturer. It is not one of my strengths. While I like the way that my voice sounds, I would prefer not to talk for an hour at a time. You can take a look at these at your leisure, and I will tell you that the chapter PowerPoints, the lectures cover about 95% of the materials that'll be on the chapter progress. They don't cover much of the information in the investigation manual because the investigation manual is updated every academic year. The textbook has only been updated about every 3 years. So we've got a brand new textbook. This is the most recent edition. And so a new set of slides. But the materials covered are very similar to what was covered in previous semesters. So these are the new PowerPoints, and I would encourage you to take an hour and go through them because they do have information that you might find helpful, but they are not a requirement. Let's see, what else is there in here? There'll be a syllabus posted, which is going to be an ADA compliant syllabus. It looks like that's probably about everything. There are just a lot of moving pieces. I don't know if I have my discussions points in here. Nothing is posted yet. So as we progress through the semester, you will have an opportunity to check everything out. So I look forward to working with you over the next semester, 15, 16 weeks, and stay safe, be healthy, and wanted you to know that every week on Monday from 11:30 to 12:30, we will have virtual office hours using Zoom, and I will post that information in the announcements. I also have physical office hours when campus is open, and you can always leave a message at my office phone number. All my contact information will be found on the syllabus. So looking forward to working with you. Have a great semester.